Joining us now is Scott Whittaker. He's the president and CEO of AdvaMed, and that is the world's largest medical technology association. AdvaMed members make the medical devices, diagnostic products, and health information systems that have transformed healthcare. And he's right in the middle of getting this testing situation straightened out. He was on PPEs. He was on ventilators. I mean, if you have a medical device that the country needs, Scott Whittaker is right in the middle of it, getting it done on the phone 24/7. He's joining us now. Scott, great to have you with us, man.
Hey, John. It's good to be back with you. I understand you're in Atlanta today, which is one of my favorite cities. I grew up a Braves fan, so I love Atlanta.
Okay, we got to talk baseball because there is no baseball, much to my chagrin. I'm a lifelong Astros fan. I lived in Atlanta for a quarter of a century. Let's see. I think I saw Atlanta beat my Astros in like 5 consecutive first-round playoffs, as I remember. We go to the games, we lose. We go to the games, we lose. We go to the games, we lose. Then finally, in that extra inning game, we finally broke through in 2005, and that 17-inning game where Brad Osmus hit a home run to tie it in the bottom of the ninth, down by a run with 2 outs and nobody on, and he had like 8 homers the entire season, tied the game. Astros going to win, and then went to their first World Series in 2005, got beat by Chicago. By the way, World Champions 2017, Scott, we didn't cheat. Did you? Perfect baseball, Scott. It was perfect. Perfect baseball. Everything was perfect. We didn't cheat.
Well, that's
the Yankees were behind. The Yankees were behind the whole thing, right? You do realize that, Scott.
I do, absolutely. Everything's about the Yankees at the end of the day. I was at the last game in Fulton County Stadium, John, when the Braves had a 2-0 lead against the Yankees in what was it, 1996, I think, and ended up.
God, I was at that game. I was at that game where they brought in that. Yeah. They Jim Leyritz hit that 3-run homer. Leyritz
hit the bomb. Yeah. So
off the closer, Mark Wohlers. Yeah. Mark Wohlers.
It was a great closer. Yeah. A year before he was fantastic, and then he ran into the Yankees and just fell apart. It was sad, but I loved Wohlers, and I loved the Braves of the 90s. I was also a Braves fan in the 80s when Murphy was there and Gene Garber and all those guys. So I'm a long-suffering Braves fan.
Well, I was at that game, and I know we got to get on to business here, but, I can't watch baseball, so I want to talk about it. So hang in there, Scott. And I was at that game, and the Atlanta was up 3-1. They had a 2-0 lead, I think, going into the top of the 7th inning, and then Leyritz hit that homer, and of course the Yankees went on to beat him. But had they held on to that lead, they win. They also had they blew a 5-0 lead the day prior to that. So they blew 2 leads.
It was brutal.
Goodness, so.
Yeah, it was brutal. Right? The air went out of the stadium, if you remember, and you just kind of felt like at that point the series was over. And then I think it was Game 5 was that 1-0 game where Smoltz pitched a beautiful game and then lost it in the 11th inning, and that was the tough one too. So good and bad memories. Can't wait for baseball to come back.
I know, right? And Atlanta Fulton. I was a fan of Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. I didn't think it was that bad. I never got. And now they've. I've not been to the no stadium, but then they had the other stadium, the Ted or whatever. That was nice. And now they're in Cobb. Now they get land a new stadiums. All right, Scott. Let's get to business. Yeah. I know. Let's get to the good thing about no baseball, no fans, is I'm an Astros fan. So that means with no fans, we can't get the booze, right? We can't get booed, so it's a good thing. Got to look for the silver lining.
That's right.
All right, tell us about AdvaMed. You were involved in the ventilators. You were involved in PPEs.
Right.
What are you doing now with testing, Scott?
Yeah, so AdvaMed companies are companies that do diagnostic testing as well. So most of the testing that you've heard about and the ramp up to be prepared and grow the testing capacity across the country is being done by our companies. March 12th was the first time a diagnostic company got a coronavirus test approved by the FDA. And since that point in time, which was about 6 weeks ago, we've made tremendous progress in scaling up testing. I think nationwide we're somewhere around the 6 million people. About 150,000 were being tested per day last week, and I think maybe, John, when you and I talked last, we were in that range. We're scaling up dramatically. I think we're close to 300,000 tests per day now, and I think working our way soon to about 500,000 tests per day. And so we're making tons of progress. It's slow because it's a complicated business, especially dealing with a novel virus like this, but really pleased with where we are today and the progress we're making.
So when you say you're pleased with the progress, give me the goal and where you are now.
The goal is to get as many tests as we possibly can. We don't have a specific number that we can put on it at this stage because, John, we're really on the supply side and not as much on the demand side. So what we want to be able to do is meet the full demand that comes either from the state governments or the federal government so that we're at full capacity and testing everyone that should be tested. That doesn't mean testing every single person in the United States. It means testing people who actually need the test and focusing on that category. And I feel like we're not there yet, John, but I think we're getting much closer to it. And that's just on the diagnostic testing side to determine if someone has the disease. There's also the serology test, which will be coming next to determine whether you have immunity and protection from it going forward. So that's the second phase of this where we're working on as well, but a little bit behind the diagnostic side.
Scott, is it when you say the diagnostic side, Scott Whittaker, is that typically referred to as the plasma testing?
No, that's on the back end as well. So on the front end, it's just a live virus test. That's where they do the swabs primarily.
Right.
Put it in a machine, run it to see if you have a live active virus in your system. The plasma is more on the treatment or immunology side to see if you can use plasma to treat people who have the virus in their system now.
So, Scott, when we get to the testing, the president has said consistently that we're doing more tests than any country in the world. And then I think the vice president said the other day, we continue to ramp it up. We're up to about 150,000, 200,000 a day. But then there's other people that say, well, we need to do, I don't know, millions a day. In your judgment, from your vantage point, Scott Whittaker, what do the tests do? And I mean, realistically, I think everybody understands those we're working in hospitals and healthcare need to get tested every day because they're coming into exposure with it. But like, how many do we actually need a day?
It's not a question that's answer that's satisfactory, John. But I don't think there's a specific number that you can put on it. What we're starting to see across the nation, as you know, is a bit of a decline in the number of cases, which is very, very good news. And so it still remains, I think, important that we prioritize testing. We do not need to test the worried well, if you will. The people who don't have any symptoms, are not sick, they're not showing any sign of any problems. That's not the best use of testing right now. I think you've identified it right. I think we need to start with and focus on healthcare workers, those who are likely exposed to the virus, individuals who have symptoms of the disease, and make sure that they are treated and taken care of. And then the people around the individuals who have the symptoms or have had the disease to understand if it's spread, right? And at that point, you're covering enough of the population. I think that you have a better sense of what the actual disease state is and how you need to manage it going forward. Even if you tested every single person in this country, 320 million, whatever the number is, that's not going to stop the progression of the disease if you don't continue to wash your hands and social distance yourself and be cautious about what you're doing. So it's probably an unnecessary exercise to go that far. But we do want our healthcare workers, anyone who's symptomatic, and people around those who are symptomatic to have access to tests.
So as you ramp up testing, and by the way, we're with Scott Whittaker. Scott is the president and CEO of AdvaMed. This is the world's largest medical technology association And Scott has been right in the middle of the president's invoking the Defense Act, Defense Production Act. He was in the middle of ramping up the ventilators. He was in the middle of getting the PPEs, and now he's right in the center with the president's team and his organization in getting on the phone and getting the testing we need. When you talk to your various companies that you're affiliated with about getting this testing ramped up, and there's obviously a sense of urgency with it. There's a lot of disparity though in the tests because some of them take an hour, some take a day, some are instantaneous, some are the swabs.
Right.
Are we going to go to a uniform technology, Scott Whittaker?
Yeah, I don't expect that we'll go to a uniform technology where every test is exactly the same. In fact, I'm not sure that that's a wise strategy, even if we were to attempt to do that. I think what could be unified is a better understanding of the nationwide network of machines that run the tests, what's available, and what the capacity is to continue to scale up. I think that's where the federal government can help us understand that better, and collectively we can work together to move forward on that. I don't think we want to have a unified testing system where every single test is the same. There's value in having a point-of-care test that you can take and get an instantaneous result. There's also value in having large machines that run large batches of tests as well, so you can expedite those very, very quickly. So having variety in the machines and having variety in the test kits, I think, is helpful because not every single case is the same. We just need to better understand exactly which ones need to be scaled and how quickly we can scale. We can turn tests around very, very quickly if we get the allocation and distribution system right, and we're working on that. It's much better, honestly, than it was 6 weeks ago. But think about how quickly we've moved, John. It's a tremendous task to go from 0 to 6 million in a matter of weeks, and we're working our way up beyond that.
How are you able to do that, Scott?
So the way we're able to do it is to produce more tests, ship them to the right locations, work with the states, governors, and the hospitals to run those tests and do them on a quick scale, right? So you have to identify, when you're dealing with a novel disease, you have to identify the disease. That was the early issue, right? And then once you've identified the disease, it's just a typical, more complicated, but a typical manufacturing process to scale up those activities as you would in any other industry in many ways.
So, what has been like through this whole thing, Scott Whittaker? We're with Scott Whittaker. He's president and CEO, AdvaMed, largest med tech association in America. So, we've gone from ventilators to PPEs to testing. What is the reaction of your affiliates been? I mean, are they getting kind of tired of these demands on things they have to make? Is it how is it affecting their companies, their profitability? Because obviously, a lot of these companies are not in that business. They're not in the PPE business. They're not in the ventilator business. Now they're converting to do that. What happens after it ends? How are they sustained here? Is that a fair question?
It's a fair question. I think the answer is we're not fatigued. We're not tired. We understand that we are facing a national challenge. We are, as an industry, in many ways on a warlike footing and doing everything we can to help facilitate what the government needs us to do. And in many ways, John, it's not it doesn't cause fatigue. I think most of us are inspired by it. And we are stepping up to meet that challenge because we know sometimes there's a greater good. And so our companies are very focused on people and not on profits, on making sure patients are taken care of, that tests are being scaled up, that the process is moving forward. We'll worry about the other stuff later once we come out of the other side and we're all better for it. But we understand, I think, as an industry, we have a role to play in helping America get back to work. And then once we get back to work, we'll recover from this and be in a much better place. And so that's the perspective we've taken. I think it's a healthy perspective, and that's why we've been working hand in glove with the administration to try to help solve this problem. And to their credit, John, let me say, I know they get some criticism from time to time from some folks, but our experience has not been anything like what I see on TV at times. We have a very good, cooperative, relationship from PPEs to ventilators and now to diagnostic testing. And that's the only way you solve national problems is by working together. We've been pleased with that, honestly.
So, Scott Whittaker, you're like a wartime general here behind the scenes, trying to coordinate this effort. You might end up being like a secretary of the army, Scott, when this whole thing is done because of the work that you've done. And I know Scott, I've heard from friends of mine you've been tireless on the phone and through electronic media, getting everybody working together towards a common goal, and you've done a magnificent job of that, Scott. And the other thing, look, if you try to find the positive linings here, and there's not a lot of them, but one of the good things is we're going to bring our supply chain back from China.
Right.
Our medical supply chain's coming back. I think the cheap labor, Goldman Sachs, Wall Street crowd, don't take offense by it. It's my words. I think they're done with this, and I think Americans are going to demand now that we may pay a little more, but I think our medical supplies, our supply chain has to come back to the United States. And I know that's a lot of the people that you represent. They'd rather be manufacturing in the United States and paying U.S. workers, right?
Yeah, you're right about that. I tell you, one of the things that's unique about this industry, though, John, is we do primarily manufacture in the United States. We're a net exporter, and that's one of the unique things about this industry, and one of the things I love about it. I will say a word of caution. I've said this to folks in the administration. We share that goal of getting more manufacturing back into the United States, but this industry has adapted to the realities of a global supply chain. That was really the policy of many previous administrations.
That's
and you
right.
kind of have to adapt to that, right? So
that's right.
So as you're talking about moving things back into the country, it's the right thing to do, and we support that goal. But we do need to be a little bit patient. You don't just do it overnight and start scaling up the way that people would like us to do. So let's get on that path, and let's be patient as we do it, and continue the progress. And over a few years, we could be there. But starting in 2021, we probably won't move everything out of other countries and move it back here and crank up immediately. So, but the goal is the right one. It's one we share, and we're going to continue pressing toward that.
All right, Scott Whittaker, we're out of time. President, CEO of AdvaMed. This is the world's largest medical technology association, and he has been like a wartime general behind the scenes getting all this stuff done. First ventilators and PPEs, and now testing. Scott, thank you for being with us.
John, thank you for having me on. I look forward to coming back on and talking baseball again. That was fun.
I know, right? It's good to, you can't play it or watch it. At least we could talk about it, Scott. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.